gonna make it. Close the door. You have to close the door, otherwise the whole rig will die. Shut the door now!
Hey guys, what's happening? Nihat here with Film Comics Explained, and as requested, today we'll be exploring William Eubanks' survival horror film, Underwater, starring Vincent Cassel and Kristen Stewart. Borrowing the narrative structure of the 1979 classic Alien and taking visual cues from 80s sci-fi horror films Leviathan and The Abyss, Underwater is a tense rollercoaster ride that follows a crew trying to escape the doomed fate of their crumbling underwater station. Not only must they contend with the immense pressures of miles of seawater above them, but the group soon find themselves encountering Lovecraftian horrors from the depths that begin to pick them off one by one. This leads us to one of the most important inspirations for the movie, H.P. Lovecraft's 1928 short story, The Call of Cthulhu. Told in 3 chapters by the narrator, the story chronicles the journey of a young man trying to find meaning in his late uncle's research. As the story unfolds, the narrator pieces together a collection of reports and manuscripts detailing encounters mankind has had with Cthulhu, his denizens, along with the cults that desire to wake him from his eternal slumber. In fact, the film borrows so much of its story from Lovecraft that the opening paragraph of The Call of Cthulhu pretty much sums up Underwater perfectly. The most merciful thing in the world, I think, is the inability of the human mind to correlate all its contents. We live on a placid island of ignorance in the midst of black seas of infinity, and it was not meant that we should voyage far. The sciences, each straining in its own direction, have hitherto harmed us little, but someday the piecing together of dissociated knowledge will open up such terrifying vistas of reality and of our frightful position therein that we shall either go mad from the revelation or flee from the deadly light into the peace and safety of a new dark age. Filmed in 2017, Underwater was another victim of the Disney 20th Century Fox merger, which explained why the film wasn't released until January of this year, a month where most production companies drop films on the market that they don't have much confidence in. Knowing all of this, and the fact that most films cut from the same cloth as Alien rarely manage to capture the cleverness and suspense of the 70s classic, I was pretty skeptical going into the movie. But I have to admit that although the film has some faults, much of which will be covered later in this video, it's actually a thrilling survival horror with a few neat surprises. Focusing on Kristen Stewart's Nora, a mechanical engineer working for the dubious Tian Industries mining company, the film begins with a mysterious earthquake on the Mariana Trench that critically damages the underwater mining station, Kepler 822, and tracks Nora's attempts to lead the few survivors that were left to safety. Due to the internal explosions inside the Kepler, which devastated its structural integrity and set the thermonuclear rig on its way to annihilation, and with no means of communicating with the surface, the group are forced to make the perilous trek down to the ocean floor towards the last remaining escape pods. Reminiscent of Ridley Scott and Jimmy Cameron's use of slow tracking shots to keep us engaged as we're shown around the Nostromo and the Sulaco in the Alien series, Underwater begins with a gradual descent down the length of the deep sea station before quickly showing us around the crew quarters. We're then introduced to Nora, who tells us that working under such depths for months at a time, along with thoughts about her late fiancé, was beginning to take a toll on her mind. Nora describes her lover as a glass half full, optimistic kind of guy who helped her see the beauty in life, and explains how his passing was a catalyst for her to return back towards her old defeatist ways. The memoir-like narration of her innermost thoughts is a nice callback to the manuscripts of survivors found in The Call of Cthulhu. But before we could learn anything more about our main character, earthquakes on the ocean floor trigger station-wide explosions, prompting the engineer to run towards the freight elevator as the walls of the station caved in around her. These tremors, initially thought to have been the result of instability on the ocean floor, were actually caused by Cthulhu awakening from his slumber. In fact, if you turn the volume up moments before the explosions, you can actually hear the deafened noise of a monster rumbling and giant footsteps in the distance. These murmurs from the lurid god are also heard on a number of occasions later in the film, giving us a taste of what was to come. Managing to make it to the lift with her colleague Rodrigo, Nora makes the difficult choice of having to close the doors on 2 other co-workers, trying to outrun the depressurization behind them. The 2 then go down to the lower levels and find fellow survivors Paul and captain of the Kepler, Lucien, who had decided to stay on the doomed station. While Lucien's choice to stay on the Kepler was partly motivated by the maritime tradition of a captain not leaving his vessel, the dominant reason was guilt, as he knew that he was partly to blame for the catastrophe. Prior to becoming captain of the Kepler station, Lucien was a ranking officer on board its predecessor, the Shepherd, which Tian had to abandon due to a similar catastrophe in the past. With the deaths covered up by the company as accidents that were typical of work in high-pressure environments, the new Kepler station was built a mile away and picked up where the company had left off. Together, Nora, Rodrigo, Paul and Lucien make it to the control base and find the last of the survivors on the Kepler station, resident biologist Emily and engineer Liam, who secretly were lovers. The duo reveal that although they'd been unsuccessful in their efforts to contact Tian's control base on the surface, they had managed to recover an audio SOS file. But when they play it, the group hear the disturbing screams of fallen crew members being attacked. The horrific sounds, coupled with the imminent destruction of the Kepler, prompts the team of 6 to make the perilous 1-mile journey down to the ocean floor, before proceeding a further mile in the darkness towards the Roebuck drill, which housed the last of the escape pods. Unfortunately for Rodrigo, as they make their way down the freight elevator, his defective helmet and pressure suit implodes under the immense pressure. When the remaining 5 begin their descent, a distress signal, believed to be from an escape pod, lures Sam and Paul towards a body in the rubble that was being consumed by a small creature. Although the pair are immediately attacked, Liam kills the beast, enabling Emily to examine it and determine that they'd stumbled upon a new species. As the crew begin debating whether or not the specimen was an adult or an infant, they hear the aggravated thumps of its family outside, confirming that it was indeed a baby and that its parents were now understandably pissed off. Further adding to their dilemma, when the remaining survivors begin their walk to the Roebuck, the Kepler explodes from above, hurling debris down as the humanoid creatures surveyed them from a distance. Angered by the murder of one of their young and seeking revenge for this transgression, the monsters relentlessly hunt the group down and successfully manage to kill Paul. While this was the first time that we see these monsters in the flesh, their existence is suggested to us in the diving station, with a mural depicting deep-sea divers being pulled down into the depths by humanoid creatures. This indicated that although nobody really knew what they were, enough of the crew had seen or heard about them, that both the Kepler and Shepard stations began developing an in-house mythology around them. With their numbers reduced, the crew continue on across the ocean floor when another creature drags Liam away into a cave connected to the old Shepard station. Lucien heads in after him and manages to get Liam back to safety, but he and Nora are then dragged away by the creature, forcing the captain to sacrifice himself to spare Nora from the rapid change in pressure they were being subjected to. Nora then enters the abandoned Shepard station and recovers a new diving suit before making her way towards the Roebuck, where she finds Liam passed out and Emily screaming in terror beside him. After helping the distraught Emily regain her sanity, Nora leads the remaining survivors towards the Roebuck, where they encounter a nest of the humanoid creatures hibernating next to the entrance. Despite their efforts to quietly sneak past them, the sound of an oxygen alarm in Emily's suit wakes one of them up. The powerful creature then starts attacking Nora and even swallows her whole, prompting the engineer to shoot her way out with a flare gun. This victory, however, is short-lived, as the tip of the Roebuck drill housing the creatures is pulled away by the horrendous mighty Cthulhu, the progenitor and master of the aquatic species that was hunting the crew down. In the expansive mythos created by Lovecraft, Cthulhu is characterized as the priest and leader of the Old Ones, a species of gods that came to Earth from the stars before human life arose. Although the Old Ones went dormant and their city slipped under the Earth's crust beneath the Pacific Ocean, we're told that when the conditions were right, the city would rise and Cthulhu would awaken to rule the world once again, a prophecy that was coming into fruition before the eyes of Nora. Despite the work of his followers to bring him back to the world in the call of Cthulhu, the monster is accidentally released from his underground kingdom by a band of sailors that stumble on a mysterious portal to his home. Underwater updates this, and instead of sailors, it's implied that Nora and her crew unwittingly released Cthulhu through their deep-sea mining. After finally making it to the Roebuck with Emily and Liam, Nora heroically sacrifices herself by giving the last 2 working escape pods to the lovers. With Emily and Liam's descent up to the surface now threatened by the pursuit of Cthulhu and his aquatic children, Nora goes one step further by overloading the station's power cores, resulting in a thermonuclear meltdown that kills Nora and the creatures, enabling the lovers to safely make it to the surface. This ending, though a little different, is taken directly from Johansson's confrontation in the last chapter of the short story, after losing most of his crew to Cthulhu. In it, the sailor recounts how he'd bravely guided his ship into the creature's head, enabling him to get away. But it's important to note that despite the damage done to the monster by the sailor, it's revealed that Cthulhu had begun regenerating himself. Cthulhu still lives too, I suppose, again in that chasm of stone which has shielded him since the sun was young. His accursed city is sunken once more. He must have been trapped by the sinking whilst within his black abyss, or else the world would by now be screaming with fright and frenzy. Who knows the end? What has risen may sink, and what has sunk may rise. Given William Eubanks' confirmation that the monster at the end of his film was indeed Cthulhu, and with the end credit scenes revealing that Tian Industries had decided to open yet another drilling station on the Mariana Trench, I think it's safe to say that the god was still alive, waiting for another opportunity to spread madness and destruction upon the world.
Someone's stuck. It's as though someone's...
I have to admit that all the technical aspects of this film are executed perfectly, from the direction, acting, cinematography, musical score, to the creepy sound design, all working in unison to capture a claustrophobic environment of deep-sea terror. Visually, this film is a treat, armed with impressive set pieces, badass suits, detailed sets, and creature designs, though admittedly not wholly original, that made me feel like a kid watching my favorite B-grade science fiction horror films. But I couldn't help but notice the giant holes in the script. For me, where Underwater misses the mark is in its lack of a first act, its underinvestment in character development, and its missed opportunity to explore Lovecraft's mythology further. Don't get me wrong, I love that we get to see a beautiful rendition of Cthulhu, but was disappointed that we didn't explore the cultures that worshipped him, the ancient artifacts that hinted to a secret dominion, or the disturbing accounts of otherworldly phenomena from those that were unfortunate to hear his call. Despite the satisfying adventure that Underwater is, unlike Alien, The Abyss, and Leviathan, which all heavily influenced the film and spent much of their respective runtimes exploring their characters and the world they inhabited, Underwater begins with the inciting incident and doesn't give us any real context to work with.
Captain, there better be a good punchline because the setup is
So weak.
weak.
You said it, buddy. I wonder why you don't have more screen time in the movie.
Watch Anime, I like anime.
Never mind, mate. By not devoting time to explore its characters, what their relationships were to each other, and how they behaved under normal circumstances, we're sort of robbed of an opportunity to witness any character growth which would have made the narrative more compelling. For a survival horror movie to work really well, we need to be more invested in the characters. The Abyss, Alien, and even the laughably camp Leviathan do this marvelously. We see the survivors in all three movies working together in their normal habitat before the inciting incident. We learn who the characters are and what their relationships were to each other, long before the main obstacle to their survival is introduced. It's not until we get this baseline that we see them getting affected by said obstacle, before finally seeing their active attempts to overcome it. But when it comes to Underwater, there is no first act, and we meet the characters while they're dealing with a calamitous crisis, and as a result, it feels like we're not watching a team, but a group of unrelated people dealing with a significant problem. Because of these issues, Underwater feels more like a watered-down Alien and a hamstrung prequel to Cloverfield than a true adaptation to Lovecraft's Cthulhu mythos. Having said that, I still really enjoyed this movie. I'm curious to hear what you guys thought about the film, so please share these in the comments below. And a huge thanks to everyone who requested we explore Underwater. Don't forget to hit subscribe and click the notification icon to stay up to date on all my content. And if there's anything else you'd like to request, please don't hesitate to ask. As always, it's been a pleasure. Nihat here with Film and Comics Explained. Thanks for stopping by.